All right, everybody. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being part of part two, MotoSmart. I'm going to just get a little, I want to check Instagram because there was a little bug I was having with it. And I want to make sure that we're live on that. So bear with me while I set that up. I'm here with Coach Robb. I'm going to kind of pass off to him for a moment. I've known Coach Robb for over a decade. It's amazing that we're still connected, and he's one of the people in my arsenal that has helped me in many ways, not only on the bike but off the bike in personal relationships. It's ironic we separated for a while, and we actually had a lot of the same path happen for us. We went through a lot of the same stuff, and when we came out on the other side, we got back together, and it was just incredible, incredible man. So today's topic is really going to be highlighting the process of going from amateur to making it to pro. Like, that's one of the key things that comes up, and you've done it with so many different racers, and you know what's different about each one of them. So I kind of want to talk about that.
Okay.
Dive into that a little bit. And anybody that's watching, feel free to drop in comments. And I'm going to just check out this I was mentioning here. And Rob, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the riders that you worked with in the past.
Okay.
And then let me see if I get this thing set up, and I'll jump back in and kind of.
No, absolutely.
Cool. So this way everybody watching has some content while I'm doing this. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, the hardest part with this conversation is when I start going back through the riders that I've had a chance to work with. Unfortunately, I show my age. So this is always a difficult conversation because we never like to acknowledge our age. But no, I've been very blessed in this sport. I actually started riding myself in 1978. So again, I'm going to date myself quite quickly. But yeah, that was my first RM80, 1978 RM80. My brother got a YZ80. And yeah, we're just a family that loves moto all the way around. And so I was in moto and all the way up until my freshman year in high school. And then my dad took me out of moto because of the expense of it. I'm adopted into a big family of 8. And the expense of moto got to be just a bit much. We got to ride recreationally, but he went ahead and transferred me over to BMX. So I made BMX very, very important. And over the course of the next 4 years, worked my way up, ended up getting as high as 8th in the world racing BMX. And then literally, no exaggeration, the day after the IBMX World Championships here in Orlando, my dad decided, hey, it's time to go to school. And I had signed a letter of intent to go ride bikes for KHS in California. So I was kind of taken back because we had never really spoken about it. But at any rate, my dad's a very smart guy. So he drops me into school. And while I'm in school, I get my roommate was involved with triathlons. So I started getting involved in triathlons. There, I made it to the junior development program, excuse me, as an athlete at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And then unfortunately got hit by a car taking a buddy to the airport here in Orlando. So I got booted off the team. The reason why I give you all that background is I love moto, grew up doing it. I grew up in an age when we had card catalogs. You didn't have Google. So I was just a sponge at the library because there weren't the amount of resources that we have now. And I was just a sponge for anything relevant to performance. It could be mental, could be physical, could be nutrition. And then go to the Olympic Training Center and I get just this plethora of information provided to us by some of the smartest, coaches in the world. I then transitioned out of the triathlon world as an athlete and started coaching full time. And I had started a young family at that time. And I was approached by Tim Cotter. Toyota was coming out with the Toyota Moving Forward program. And you probably remember that was the thing that everybody wanted to get a part of. And if you know anything about athletics, it's difficult because if you get in the inside, you start to become jaded. You become a little bit disenchanted with the whole process. So I was very resistant to getting involved in moto because I'm still a fanboy to this day, as many years as I've been in it. And so I was really strong arm running and I did not want to do it. And Tim and some of the guys at Toyota, some of the very nicest people I've ever met, they just kept, hey, we need you, we need you, we need you, we want you. And I don't want to get involved on the inside because like in the triathlon side, that's our largest segment. And I don't want this to come across as arrogant, but I can't go to the races without somebody saying, hey, can you get me a heart rate monitor? Hey, can you get me an entry into Ironman Hawaii? Hey, can you get me some energy bars? Can you get me some running shoes, a bike deal, whatever? It gets boring. And I want to go to the triathlon and do races myself. My wife and I both still love triathlon and we love to go race. But the problem is you go there and everybody, gimme, 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 gimme. I didn't want that in moto, right? I was like, I don't
There's
want any.
something about anonymity, like when people don't know who you are, that's really awesome. And when you get to be a certain level in certain areas, like you end up, people know who you are, and that's what ends up happening. And sometimes it can be as micro scale of like just at the track,
Yeah.
like how many times people drop my name and they're supposed to ride for free, and I'm like, I'm not sure who John is. Like,
Yeah.
there's a
Yep.
lot of Johns.
Well,
So
and you can't pay your bill with thanks. And that's the
no,
thing, they're like, oh, Ian, thanks for letting me ride. And you're like, yeah, but that doesn't pay the bills.
mhm,
Exactly. So with that
yeah,
being said, I kind of had an uphill battle and I finally succumbed and I went ahead and joined the program. And if you don't know what the Moving Forward program was, they had a group of, I want to say it was 6 or 8 people. They were industry experts. It was Davey Coombs, Tim Cotter, David Iser. It was just the who's who in the sport of motocross. And what they were doing is they selected 10 people and they paid me to train those 10 people. And I was very fortunate. You had Sean Hackley in there. You had Kyle Chisholm in there. You had Matt Bonney. It was the who's who in that pro sport class that year.
mhm,
And then what they were doing is whoever they awarded the Toyota Moving Forward program, they were guaranteed a spot. At the time, it was the MotoSmart Kawasaki team that was actually being managed by, if you think about Troy Lee Designs, the
mhm.
team manager, the last name Keefe. So he was the team manager, and our teammates at that time were Boniface, Bonnie, Chisholm, and I apologize, I can't remember who the 4th rider was that year. So Sean Hackley ended up being awarded that at the end of the year. And so he ended up getting put onto that motorsport program. Well, the reason why I give you that background is that was what busted the door open, because at that time I started getting recognized for working with that group of guys. And I'm to this day very fortunate. Ronnie Tishner reached out to me and he said, hey, I've seen what you've done over here. I'm obviously I knew who Ronnie was, right? Because I'm still a fanboy. Ronnie's Factory Suzuki world champion, the whole 9 yards. So I'm just kind of enamored that I get a chance to talk to Ronnie Tishner because I have pictures of him framed on my wall back in 8th grade.
Yeah.
So I meet with Ronnie, and I did not know who his stable was consisting of at that time. And who he had was Ashley Filick, Factory Honda, Ian Treadle, Factory Suzuki, and Adam C. with Factory Cowie. And so he said, look, he goes, I'm an on the bike guy. I know nothing about off the bike. Here it is. Go for it. So you can imagine I was taken back and I was honored to be able, to get a nod of approval from Ronnie Tishner and to be able to start working with that caliber of riders. So got a chance to work with AC. And then at that time, AC was riding with Zach Freeberg. So that was cool. Got to meet Zach Freeberg, John Ames out of California, Zach Commons, great group of guys, right? They were all training at Waldo underneath Ronnie Tishner. So as that started to grow, that's when the seed started to kind of exponentially
I want to ask
expand.
you a question before you go further.
Yeah, go right ahead.
And if anybody has questions, drop them in. I don't see all the comments, but please do drop them in. We're using a StreamYard studio here. So did Ronnie ever tell you, or do you know why Ronnie saw an expertise in you off the bike? Or was there something particular about your personality or something you had done with non-motocrossers that he would like do that? Or Tim saw that and said, you got to come over. There's probably some common theme there, right, in you that they recognize. And, we're talking about common themes from people going from amateur to pro. And here we're talking even about your career already, right? Like how did you go from not doing anything in motocross, and so many people struggle to become trainers and make a name for themselves. And here you're just so good in something that's not even motocross, but somebody sees it and says, hey, we need to bring this into our sport. So is there something about you that you think that was, or they tell you?
No, I never had that conversation with Ronnie. I still speak with him to this day. He's still a dear friend. I don't know the answer to that question. The only thing I could hope it would be is, with my race experience as an athlete, the success as an athlete, and then knowing that because I've got several degrees. I've got a degree in exercise physiology, nutrition, sports psychology. And I think however that was conveyed amongst that group of 10 guys, and it's a very, very small community. Somebody voices a need, a want, a desire, a pain point. And then if they hear, hey, this guy over here has got that already resolved, they don't want to reinvent the wheel. They're going to go where there's already some forward momentum. And what is so interesting about that question is it didn't take very long before riding coaches started seeing me as a threat. They felt as if I was trying to take their market away, which was interesting because and I don't mind telling you this publicly, whenever a riding coach refers an athlete to me, I always give him a monthly stipend back. It's not a kickback. And we talked about this even in our last show together. I can take out an ad anywhere, right? And I can spend a couple $1,000s a month on an ad. Well, if you're looking at somebody like a Ronnie Tishner, an established guy, very, very accomplished, when somebody like that gives you a nod of approval, in my biased opinion, I feel like there is always going to be inherent value to that nod of approval. So we always give a percentage of whatever money comes back, and we don't do it as a finder's fee. We do it every single month that athlete stays active. Why? Because I want to see motocross guys who have all of this experience. Please don't leave the sport. What can I do to help you stay in the sport and make a living? My little token given back as a thank you for giving me a nod of approval. And again, I don't mind saying, when you're starting to put $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month into a riding coach's business for referrals, that riding coach is like, okay, cool. Now we've just elevated his coaching program because now he knows what he doesn't know. He delegates what he doesn't know. I know what I don't know, and I just facilitate what the riding coach is asking you to do. And that's the momentum.
What I've seen, before you want to jump in, because what I've seen is what happens is those riding coaches that work with you, they continue their on the bike stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But then they'll bring you in for the expertise in the other areas. Like you mentioned sports psychology. Like when I was growing up, I didn't have anything in coaching for that until The Mental Edge came out by Paul Feed. And people dismiss how important what's going on in somebody's mind is so often. And a riding coach is really good at riding a dirt bike that maybe raced pro or not, isn't going to have that same level of like, okay, how do I uncover what's really holding this person back? And that's
exactly
when you see people on the podium, you always see it's 99% mental, right? There's two things. You'll hear that and you'll hear thanks to God, thanks to Jesus, right? Like those are the two things you pretty much hear from consistently from riders and their sponsors. Like it's just, those are the three, like I said, three things. So, so if a coach brings you in, like you add value to his program, right? You're not trying to take his customer and say, okay, you're coming over to my house.
That's right.
Now you've created something better for the customer or the rider in this case. It's like a holistic approach. And that's why the nutrition, big piece of it. Like how many riders have a degree in nutrition or even have studied nutrition, right?
And that's a big one because there's no disrespect to nutritionalists, but there's a lot of them that don't even understand the demands of moto. So sure, you can whip out a textbook and a calculator and divide your body weight and come up with how many grams of carbs, protein, and fat, but not realizing what we deal with on a 600-degree bike, 100-degree humidity, covered every square centimeter of our skin that doesn't dissipate heat. That's a totally different nutritional strategy. And it's funny you bring that up as well, Ian, because like when I was working with Ian Treadle, he was friends with Brock Tickle. So I was able to start working with Brock, and that was the year he won the title for Pro Circuit. That segued over to, I started working with the Martin brothers, and it was both Jeremy and Alex, which then they had a 3-man team out of Millville. One of the riders was Spencer Daly. Spencer Daly then exposed me to Ryan Dungey. So that's what got me into the Ryan Dungey loop. And the cool part with Ryan is like I had spoke with him a couple of times throughout the years, just answering questions. I mean, Spencer Daly and I go way back, and Spencer's like, "Hey, do you mind if Ryan calls you?" And I don't want this to sound disrespectful. I don't care what someone's last name is. I've got athletes that make $100 million a year, right? So this motocross is not the most lucrative sport we're involved with. So the idea is, it's like I thought it was cool that Ryan called, and I just answered his question, and I wasn't like, "Oh, will you let me work with you?" Let me just answer a question. I waited till Ryan reached out to me before, and by the way, that's how it is with all the riders. And I don't want that to come across as misunderstood at all. Whether it was getting a chance to work with Brock Tickle, Brock had questions. Whether it was working with Dunge, he had questions. The Martin brothers, Jordan Bailey, obviously, there's a lot more that goes down it. But when you go through the list of all the riders we have 263 amateur number 1 plates, and we have 4 AMA number 1 pro plates. So, and that's both in moto as well as off-road. So when you start looking at it, and I think we've talked a little bit about this off the record, Ian, one of my I have 2 catch-22s in our business. If somebody says to me, let's take it's a vet rider, and they go, well, what do you know about vets? Physiology is the same, whether you're 12 or 22 or 52, right? There's some things that we have to factor in, hormone differences and recovery and all that. And then they'll go, well, who did you work with? So You give them a list or you refer them to the website where we have a list of our riders. Well, you only work with pros. No, you just asked me who I worked with. I didn't come out and tell you who I worked with. You asked. The other side of the coin is because the riders, right now, if you watch Pro Supercross, I'd have to look. I think we have 7 people that are using our nutrition program. We have 3. It's either 3 or 4 that are using our sports psychology program. Well, I can't market that we're working with those guys because they're paying us and their agents won't allow them to allow us to market them, which I understand, right? But that's the part that makes the marketing in our sport so difficult, because you think that everybody's heard your name before. You think everybody's heard or seen your logo before. They really haven't. And it's a very small community that we're in, which is why I so appreciate the opportunity to work with someone like yourself. If I get an invite to a podcast, you bet your bottom dollar I'm going on it, because if I can debunk one thing that's undermining somebody's effort, here's the effort level, right? Here's the desire, here's the zeal to do something. And then somebody's over here doing it in an uneducated capacity, which is literally either damaging their health, their performance, or both. We have to stop this. And I know that sounds very hokey and very, but think about it. What's the number one reason why, well, I guess we could argue there's a couple, in my biased opinion, the number one reason why our sport doesn't grow is because of injuries and burnout. So if we can minimize that, and that's, how many kids have you seen didn't make it out of Super Mini because they got smoked physically and mentally? And you talk about it tonight.
A lot, and it carries transition into adulthood. Like if it's not rectified quickly, right? So, and then they're not even interested in moto at all, or they'll watch it, but they don't want to ever be on a bike. And they just, it's weird. I was thinking about this today. There was one rider I was watching, had to be like 8 years ago. That was at Cycle Ranch 9 years ago. And his father did everything he possibly could. And I watched his father give, but he also had the expectations with that giving.
Yeah. And
by the time the kid got his pro card, he was just like, I'm not even doing anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm done. And, they still, I don't even know how much they talk to this day. And I'm like, I want to rectify that, because that shouldn't be what comes out of motocross and the community that we're building, right? That's like the opposite. Like we want to bring families together and make them stronger and have a solid set of values and community, right? So maybe what are some of the things that you see that bring that person like a Dungey, right? That goes from amateur level and through and makes it to the pro. What's different between him and the 99.9% of the people that don't even make it to the big main event, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on the bone there. And if I can go backwards from your last statement, this is why I always say to the parents, my responsibility is I work for you. I will, and by the way, I've been public on this. I just said it on Jace with Gypsy Tales. I will never work for an OEM. To me, that's like selling your soul to Satan. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but think about it. If I'm working for the OEM does not care about the health of the individual. They only care about that championship, and they don't care at what cost we get there. And what I always say to my any rider, whether I was working with you as a vet rider or whether I'm working with your son on a 65 or an 85, I will never put your health behind performance. It's always going to be in front of performance, because that's where you get sustainability. And again, I've been very vocal about this. I've been fired more times than I've been hired, because people say, hey, I hired you to bust my kid's ass. Okay, well, guess what? Your son's already exhausted. And what I'm telling you is you just need to go pit ride. You need to go get on your bicycle. You need to go get on your motorcycle and act like you're doing a photo shoot and go have fun, which leads me to bone number 2 that you talked about, where there's meat on the bone. That's why I always say to the parents, I want you to blame me. Let me be the bad guy. Please don't disrupt the relationship between your son and yourself. You'll always be dad, father, father, son. Please don't jeopardize that. Mom, son, mom, daughter, daughter, dad. Please don't jeopardize that. No matter how good they get, never lose that relationship as a parent for the reasons that you just said. Yeah, I mean, we could sit here and I'm not name dropping on anything that's not already public record. Go watch the documentary on Villopoto. Go watch the documentary on Millsaps. Go watch the documentary on Josh Grant. It's all out there. I'm not creating hearsay. I think that's sad. And like you said earlier, this idea that we give with some level of expectation. I say this to all my coaches. You do what you do and don't do it. There's a lot of do's and don'ts in that, right? You do everything with 0 expectation. And if you can't do that unconditionally, then you're not going to be a good coach. You were talking about earlier, there's a lot of fast guys that think they are good coaches until they get asked why they're doing what they're doing. And then they get butthurt thinking that you're challenging them in their expertise. You're not.
You're just asking why.
Yeah.
And it's funny because everything you're saying, I see the parallel in society.
Yes.
Like the moment I ask somebody a question, like, why did you do it that way? They're like, because, and they're like, they jump at
defense.
I'm actually want to learn. Like,
yes.
Maybe there was some thinking I didn't have and it's going to be better, but like people are very reactive that way.
Well, I've even had to say it here with my clients. I say it every day, literally. If you start a workout and you don't understand how that one workout fits into the week and how that week fits into a training block and that training block fits into a year, then I have failed you as a physiologist. Now, we don't have to get into the nitty gritty. Now, if your mom and dad want to call, or you as an athlete, if you want to sit down off the record, right? Because I have a standard call every week with my clients for 30 minutes, same time every week. If you want to go down into a deeper dive on oxidative stress, free radicals, distribution of this and that, heck yeah, because I love the education side of it. That's why I do videos every day on YouTube. I'm just answering questions that come in. It's a pain point. I say this all the time. Nobody wants to see my ugly face on a camera, right? They're there because they're
I don't know if that's true. Don't tell yourself. You might want to check that sports psychology thing out there.
Well, if somebody's coming in and wondering what is actually the cause of arm pump, let's talk about why, pickle juice works. It doesn't solve arm pump. It solves one of the potential problems of arm pump, which is electrolyte deficiency. And pickle juice has a lot of sodium in it. That's just an electrolyte. But it's about the idea of debunking all these fads and agendas. And we could sit and do an entire, 2 hours on just the things that have come and gone. What happened to, Superset, Super Slow? What happened to Zone, Atkins, South Beach? What happened to P90X, which is now Beachbody? They're all fads, right? And the interesting part is, if you're on this side of the camera and you're seeing in our wellness clinics, how many people we pick up on a weekly basis that have gone intermittent fasting, keto, paleo, all these fad diets and exercise ways, HIIT training. If you saw the amount of people who walk through our front door as a byproduct of that, you would see why I'm so publicly against it. Now, I can sit with you and I've got a multitude of textbooks and I can literally tell you what the book's going to convey. I'm going to show you why it doesn't work for the average individual. And that's because 99% of people are absolutely too exhausted to be doing high intensity interval training. This is something, Ian, I think you'll find pretty interesting. We rescued a golden doodle. If you don't know what it is, it's a big 80, he's 83 pounds. A couple of weekends ago, I looked it up. I just said to Michaela, I said, I just want to make sure that we're feeding this dog enough food, right? So I do like everybody else. I go to Google and I put in how much food does an 82-pound dog need. From one of the top veterinary clinics in the world, the very first sentence in the paragraph was, if you don't feed your dog a sufficient amount of calories, here's a list of signs associated with malnutrition. I'm like, there's a paragraph saying that if you don't feed a dog enough food, he's going to have signs of malnourishment. And we, the smartest species on earth, are voluntarily starving ourselves. How does that make any sense? Now, again, I can sit here and cite to you every benefit associated with intermittent fasting. But do you have the foundation to do it? If your stress level's pinging, if your resting heart rate's elevated, if you have sleep apnea, if you're walking on pins and needles, if you're going through a divorce, bankruptcy, just found out your dog has cancer, do you think starving yourself for 12 hours is going to really feed the body what it needs? There's a difference between survival and thriving. You get lost on an island or you get stranded on an island. Yes, it's a cool thing. Our body's been designed in a way you'll adapt and overcome until you can't. That's called adrenal fatigue, Epstein-Barr. Yep. There you have it.
So you have your short-term gain maybe of what you think you want, but if you continue that, then you're not going to be in the place you want. And, I personally am a fan of intermittent fasting because I did it while I was getting divorced.
Yes.
But it was actually, it actually worked really well for me to do at that stage of my life.
But let me interrupt you. You're very good on the other structure of your life to make sure it fit. If it was sitting over here, you would not have done that. And that's what makes it work.
Yeah. And actually having the discipline around that gave me discipline in other things in my life. So there's a time and a place, I think, for everything. But if I'm riding motocross, we talked about this last time, like it's not, no intermittent fasting. It's not,
right.
It's not healthy. So,
And that's what, when I said that you gave me 3 big bones to chew on, you look at the top one, right? Please don't disrupt that interpersonal relationship with parent and child. And then you bring it all the way down to, how does somebody like a Dunge go from amateurs, where there's that group that gets to amateurs and they falter? And I think it stems from, and I'm just going to call the names out. I like both of these people as individuals, but again, I'm not creating hearsay. Just go look at the records. Look at the red carpet ride that Jet Reynolds and Ryder DeFrancesco were all the way on Team Green from 65s. I mean, rumor is that those guys were making mid 6 figures a year on 65s, 85s, all the way up to before they went pro. So let's just say they're making 500 grand over 10 years, right? That's $5 million that were invested per rider. And neither one of them can get off the ground now that they've gone pro. Now, if you go and you look at the online media, they'll tell you that at the end of last year, Ryder D was dealing with food poisoning. That's not true. He was dealing with Epstein-Barr and still is to this day. You go, Rob, why do you bring up that dirty laundry? Because you ask the question, how come some guys can go from amateurs and make it as a pro? And why do guys get to the very top of amateurs and then they fizzle out and go down? Well, it's because some of them get on a red carpet ride. They get used and abused by the system. They're not educated. And I'll even go so far as to say, those guys that get put on a red carpet ride, if you're riding a rocket ship, do you think fitness and nutrition matters? No. You just ride the socks off the bike. It's faster than everybody else's. It handles better. So you look like a rock star. And then when you finally go pro, and there's 19 other bikes on the starting grid that are just as good as yours, even top privateer bikes, look at Masterpool. He proved, with the help of HP Development and Derek there, they built a motor that can haul the mail, right? So now all of a sudden the playing field somewhat levels within a couple percentage points. You don't see that proliferation and the growth of the guys that had the red carpet ride up. And then the kids that were clawing, kind of just second tier amateurs, those are the ones that you see come out on top. I would always rather.
That's another funny parallel in life. It's like, I've watched so many people with so much talent and so much fortune come their direction, and it just like disappears because they don't have the work ethic, right? And that makes me always think about like how the Jordan story, Michael Jordan story, right?
Absolutely.
So in terms of the people that can make it, first of all, having that family foundation and that connection is a key component to.
It's the foundation. It's the foundation.
It's beautiful, beautiful. So having that, and if you don't have that, then you're basically building a castle in sand, potentially, right? And then having the nutritional wherewithal so that you're consuming enough calories, because everything out there will tell you that you have to have 2,500 calories a day or 2,000 calories a day. And when you're doing moto, you might burn that in a moto. So you might have to be more like Michael Phelps and consuming 6,000 to 9,000 calories a day, depending on what you're doing, right? And where those calories come from is very important. Those were 2 things I think I heard throughout that. And then is that accurate? Did I miss anything?
No, you didn't miss anything, but we can add a little bit for the sake of the listeners. In regards to how many calories you need, it's a very, very simple formula, and I can't take credit for it. It came directly from the Olympic Training Center. Take your body weight in pounds, add a 0, and then double it for the most part. So a 150-pound person needs 1,500 calories to stay alive. And if you're going to be physically active or you have a physically active job, double it. And if you go and you have a Garmin and you look at the dashboard and you fill out MyFitnessPal will push your consumed calories into the Garmin dashboard. And there's a report called Calories In and Out on the Garmin Connect. If you're chronically running a deficit, you're going to put yourself in the hole. And people are like, no, I've got to be calorically restricted to lose body fat. Nothing could be further from the truth. Because let me put it in terms that our listeners will completely resonate with. If you and I go down and we buy a brand new motorcycle and you hire me as your mechanic, all right? And I say, Ian, I'm a smart dude. We're going to really lighten your bike up. I'm going to run half the radiator fluid, half the engine oil. Okay. But we're going to save 4 pounds. You go, Rob, you're like, Rob, you're fired. I'm like, why? We're saving weight. Right. And you go, Rob, you're an idiot. If we run half the oil that's spec'd for the engine casings, we're going to overheat the bike. If you run the radiator, in fact, I'll come up with even a better idea to save weight. We'll go to a smaller radiator and then we'll run that in half because we'll save twice as much weight. You'd fire me. Why? Because it overheats the motorcycle. Well, what does overheating do to a motorcycle? It stresses it. Then why in God's green earth do you think being calorically restricted is going to cause your body to flourish? And when you go and you get your blood work, stop and think about it. You're getting a portfolio of micro and macronutrients in your blood, right? So when somebody goes out and they say, hey, don't eat fruits and vegetables because it has sugar in it, I want you to rephrase that and ask yourself, what nutrients am I losing by removing that food from my diet? If you have a severe reaction, if you have true definition, true celiac disease, yeah, you probably shouldn't eat gluten. It tears your belly up. But if you don't have such adverse reactions to that type of food, eat it, because there's always going to be something nutritionally in there that once you go void of it, where are you going to get it from? The one that I always like to use is something as benign as iodine. Iodine drives the production and the function of your, not production, but the function of your thyroid. So when somebody goes in and says, don't eat something, why? Goes back to what you said earlier, Ian. Never be afraid to ask the question why. And if somebody gets butthurt over asking the question why, they don't know what they're talking about. Because if you know the answer why,
insecurity about it, right? Like,
yeah,
whoa. So,
so I want to make sure people understand that calorie number, like you were talking about. If you don't have a Garmin and you're wondering, hey, how many calories should I take in? Just take your body weight and add a 0. That's what you need on a daily basis to stay alive. And then, when we were at the Olympic Training Center, they had to use that formula and multiplied it by 3.
Yeah. So there it is, right? So
yeah,
depending on the level that you're at. So if you have a way to track it, then we want to
we
try
were
to
also training
as many calories.
We were training 40 hours a week though, too. So that's why I don't want somebody to just take the number by 3 and go, oh, of course I got fat. Well, again, you eat too many calories on a regular basis. Sure, you're going to go fat, or get fat. But on the flip side of that, if we're talking about trying to reduce the stress, and when you talk about transitioning from amateur to pro, we have to play the long game. And this is where I get very, very excited. I actually get goosebumps thinking about it, because there's so many moto parents, particularly of the younger kids, that, hey, let's face it, they didn't grow up in an education of physiology. So they're just trying to do the best thing they can for their children. Well, their riding coach is doing what their riding coach said, but their riding coach doesn't know why that riding coach did it. So we just do it because everybody does it. And next thing you know, you've got a young child that never makes it into the 125 class. And there starts the attrition rate that we so desperately are trying to stop.
It's so funny you just mentioned that, because it just reminded me, like, yesterday was Valentine's Day, right?
Yes, sir.
So, and this is a little bit aside from motocross, but I think it's a good story to share. So just bear with me. So my son's grandmother sends him a nice little Valentine's care kit, toys, all kinds of cool stuff. But she also sends him Pez and those little sweethearts. Guess what's in those things? Nothing you want in your child.
Yeah.
So last night he ended up getting them, and I pulled out all the red ones, all the blue ones, because I hadn't researched yellow. And my wife's like, "Oh, yellow's fine." No, it's not. It's not. But he went from like we went ziplining, like ziplining half more, I think 800 meters. He's going on a zip line over the canopies. He's really in great mood, great attitude. Everything's going great with him. He has 3 of these things. Meltdown, screaming, crying, yelling, like won't take direction. And I'm just watching exactly how it unfolded. Like all of a sudden he starts saying stuff that doesn't make sense. And I'm just like, what is going on? He can't sit still. And I'm just like,
wow.
These things. But I see people show up, and that's their kid's snack that they're going to give them before they get on the dirt bike. And I'm like, wait. Like you don't have your real child, because what happens, it messes with you, your emotions, it gives anxiety, it increases heart rate. Blue has bronchial effects. You can't breathe. And nobody, they just think it's normal. And I'm just like, whoa. Like, let's get everybody working, like functioning at 100%. Let's get them 100. We're putting them on a dirt bike. We got to get them 100% before we even send them out there. And that goes back to what you said was, you got to get the health. If the health is before the
performance.
The performance, right? Like get the health.
Absolutely.
So we got to really be present on that. And I kind of feel like, and I could be completely wrong on this, but I can consume like a ridiculous amount of calories and not gain a pound until I start eating certain things. right? There's certain things I have to like, I could have the chicken, but if I do fried chicken, there comes the poundage, right? And I could
Yes.
have the same portion. So it's really a lot of what we eat and how we prepare it.
Hmm.
So we can actually take more than that calories, and we kind of, once you get tuned with your body, you feel it. Like
Yeah.
it's better than measure. I don't feel like I need a watch to tell me how much I need to eat, but I
Right.
had to really be present with how I'm feeling inside, and how every time I have something, it makes me feel. Like the moment I take a sip of something, I know right away, like if it has something like soy in it or
Yes.
strawberry in it, like those things, I know they have an effect on me. And that's important for us to realize, we got to get that right to really be in that state to have the performance that we want to have.
Yeah. Well, the statement that you said about needing the watch, ironically, is we don't use the watch because we're afraid people are going to overeat. 99% of the time they undereat
Yeah.
because of the point that you just brought up. If you eat fresh fruits and you eat clean vegetables and you eat lean protein, they're not calorically dense. So if you go back to the 3,000 number that you threw out earlier, if you're burning 3,000 calories a day, divide that by, the amount of calories in an apple. I always use an extra large egg. An extra large egg is 75 calories. So if you take 3,000 calories, which you're burning both during the day as well as activity, divide that by 75. Let's just say that's 47, 48 eggs, right? So if tomorrow morning you wake up and I put 4 dozen eggs on the counter and I go, this is the volume of food that represents what you're going to burn. This is why I use the watches, not because people overeat, but because people have a tendency to not eat enough because they don't
Mhm.
understand the difference between calorie burn rate and what's going to make up that volume of food. You also said something about the color of those Pez and those hearts and all that. We have a general rule of thumb, and you don't have to be a rocket science to do this. Read the label. If you can't pronounce it, you can't digest it. So all those blues and all those crazy colors, if you read the label, those names of those colors are 33 letters long. So that's a very frightening consideration when you bring it all together. You know, and that's the part that I find so interesting when you're looking at the idea of nutrition doesn't need to be difficult. What we want to do is we always want to find out what it is. Like people ask me all the time, Rob, can you put a meal plan together for me? Sure. After we know how many calories you're burning. Because I can send you, I mean, I've got 5 books on Amazon. They're just made for smoothies and snacks and dinner meals, right? And they're just real food.
You could send them mine that you made for me years ago,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the reality.
Yep.
And before we go deep into that, I
Yeah.
want to mention something. There is an alternative on these colorings, right? If you
Hmm.
want yellow, you got turmeric. If you want red, you got beets. And if you want blue, you got spirulina, blue
Hmm.
spirulina. 3 things that are really good for you. Turmeric, anti-inflammatory, right? So if you're training so now all of a sudden you take that same treat, you put turmeric in it to make it yellow, and you're actually benefiting your body.
Yep.
It's the alternatives and they're out there. So you just have to
Yeah.
actually look for them. And another thing is, shopping on the outside of the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
Or in the produce and meat section alone.
Yep. But I also want to answer the question that you mentioned. Why would somebody eat? Let's back to train up. You said that if you eat fried chicken, you can just see the weight gain. Now that we're going to go down kind of a Sheldon Cooper mode for just a moment. We're going to go
Yeah,
into a
yeah,
little
do it.
bit, just a little bit.
Okay.
So when you think about a chicken breast that's grilled, right? There's nothing on it. What is it that when you put the chicken into the grease, what you're essentially doing is you're attaching that grease to it. And sometimes they'll put flour in there. So now you've got a carbohydrate that's attached to that. When your body, and this is where the math comes in, when your body digests, let's go away from the chicken, but then we'll come back to the chicken here. If you eat an apple, that's an edible carbohydrate. Because my wife tells me all the time, people don't know what carbs are. Just think of fruits and vegetables and high quality grains. They're all going to fall into the category of a carbohydrate. So if you eat an apple, that's considered a carbohydrate. When you eat it and your body converts it to stored sugar in the body, it's known as glycogen. Those two are interchangeable. Don't let it intimidate you. Oh, glycogen, what is it? Stored sugar. That's it. What you need to know is that when you exercise and when you think at work or school, your brain uses glycogen and it gets it directly from your liver. So we always say there's 2 gas tanks in the body. One's your liver, feeds your brain. One's your muscles, that feeds movement. Now, the reason why I want to kind of go down this bunny trail for just 19 seconds is when you eat a carbohydrate and your body converts it to glycogen, part of that retention and that conversion, the body naturally stores 2.5 grams of water. See where we're going here? So if you're an athlete and you snack on fruits and vegetables, you get vitamins, minerals. Both of those are high in water and they're high in electrolytes. So you get 4 benefits on a fruit or a vegetable. Then when you store it, it goes into the form of glycogen. You retain 2.8 grams or 2.5 grams of water. The reason why I say 2.8 is that's usually the range, 2.5 to 2.8 grams of water. So now by eating the apple, you've prehydrated the body. Now you go ride. You've got vitamins, minerals. You've got antioxidants, which when your heart rate goes up, you hear the word free radical all the time. Part of that metabolic byproduct is oxidative stress. That's where we get the word antioxidant. It's to offset oxidative stress. Oxidative stress comes from elevated heart rate. So eating fruits and vegetables gives you vitamins, mineral, water, electrolytes. Now you get high quality glycogen that comes in. When it gets converted to glycogen, edible to stored, you retain 2.5 grams of water. Now you're prehydrated. Now I've got somebody who's got the ability to process that speed that we spoke about in our last call together. You want that extra speed. Now your brain can process, bring in more speed into the corner down a straightaway. And because your liver is stored, the glycogen storages are up, you might find yourself peeling a second off your lap time because you snacked on fruits and vegetables.
And maybe missing a bump that you would have hit.
Yeah.
Right. Now
because you can see it.
You're actually not doing as much work. Right. So in that tier, you got to have this figured out as a baseline. You really, and you can't out train the nutrition.
No.
Right. You really got to train it.
Yes.
But I'm glad that you went Sheldon Cooper mode, because what was going through my mind constantly was how I know that when I use a lot of ATP in my brain, right? Like if I sit down and I don't even move, right? Maybe my fingers move, but I'm like reading through something, studying something, writing something, and I like have a day where it's like that, phone calls back and forth, and I'm using like my brain power. My heart rate's not elevated any of that time, but I'm burning glycogen. Like I'm exhausted, right?
Yes.
And I know I'm probably not eating as much as I should, but like a heart monitor might not track that, right? So,
well, the Garmin will, because it'll track your stress score. So when your brain is like Adderall focused on something like that, you'll see the calorie burn rate will go up substantially. If you think back, anybody who's watching this with us, think back, depending on your age, think back to when you're in middle school. You didn't go to school and exercise for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. You used your brain. Yeah, we did have recess. They don't have it anymore. Pathetic. But the idea here is you came home and what was the first thing that you went to? You pulled that pantry door open, which is everything that's in a box, a bag, or a can, everything, maybe except canned tuna, sardines. If you exclude that little small section of the grocery store, everything else in that store except paper products, baby goods, you get the gist of what I'm saying. Anything that's in a bag, a box, a bar is all carbohydrates in a wrapper. Think about the chip aisle, all carbohydrates. Go down the cookie aisle, all carbohydrates. Go down, even when you go down canned beans and corn and all that, it's all carbohydrates, right? And when we're low, and we're going to go down another bunny trail, and I promise I won't go there, but this is why when you're under a lot of stress, you find yourself binging on sugary items, because what you don't realize is when the body's under a high level of stress, the pancreas releases insulin, and your body all of a sudden wants sugar. That's why we end up getting into the chip bag. Stress is people go, oh, I don't have the discipline. No, you're stressed to the gills. And if you go and you study, when the stress level goes up, the pancreas releases insulin. It's the same kind of fight or flight mode that you end up getting, and we gravitate towards simple carbohydrates.
So for me, I always have this thing about processed foods, and maybe it's not unfounded, but like I don't want to have that cracker. Like I will force myself to have a banana or an apple, or eat something real, or maybe a smoothie or something like that.
Yes.
Because for some reason I think processed foods, like there's a lot of other nutrition that gets worked out in the processing, and then there's like a lot of times gums and fillers, and then who knows what's floating around in the air and all those places. Am I ridiculous for thinking about it that way?
No, not at all. Because just to your point, and just so everybody knows, to show how unscripted your and I's conversation is, right? I want people to think about the word enriched. And by FDA rules and regulations, once they take the nutrients out of something, white rice, all of the
Mhm.
nutrients sits on the husk. So if you strip the husk off of that, go look at a box of white rice. What does it say?
Enriched.
Enriched white
Mhm.
rice. So what they're doing is they're bringing in artificial nutrients to say that they brought the nutrient value back into what they just took apart. When you look at anything, and I don't live in a glass house. When Michaela and I came and we visited with you, or we came to Costa Rica in your hometown, and we go to other places and travel. Yeah, we'll travel with energy bars because we don't want to grab a bag of chips, right? We might end
Mhm.
up getting a red eye. Restaurants might be closed, whatever it may be. And the idea behind all of this is, I don't live in a glass house. So to your point, Ian, yeah, you do your level best to stay out of it, because I don't want anybody to think I'm gloating on anything that sits in a can has to have a preservative. That's on the way it becomes shelf stable. But 99.99% of the preservatives that are out there cannot be digested by the human body. Now
Yeah.
think about all the items that are sitting on the grocery store, in the grocery store, excuse me.
No, absolutely. Like when I go tour like the food places to see where we're gonna get our food from, sometimes I walk into them. I'm like, this is just a giant food morgue.
Hmm.
It's just an animal morgue, like just, or not even just animal. Everything, all the food is dead. Like it
Yes.
seems like it's just dead to me. There's no life in it, right? So that's not going to
Yes.
help me perpetuate my life. It's kind of the simple way I look at it. And to your point on the enriched flour, I just saw something where they had cereals that were enriched with the iron,
Hmm.
right? And you can literally break it up and you put a magnet to it and it pulls all the iron to the side and you see like a thing of iron.
Hmm.
But it's not bioavailable iron. It's a different type.
Exactly.
It's a metallic iron, which is significantly less expensive. It's
Yep.
not bioavailable. You might get a little of something for it, but you're actually just putting heavy metals into your body. Why would you want heavy metals in your body that aren't like the ones that would actually be bioavailable? It's just making
And
yourself
that's why
heavier.
when people say that we're getting a little bit too eccentric with it, I understand that when you say that, until there becomes a problem. And that's, I say this all the time. If you have a piece of paper and you're taking notes tonight, which I appreciate if you are, if you think about it in a linear fashion, cells make up tissue. Tissues are made up, excuse me, any tissue that you have, all the cells are exactly the same. I know that kind of sounds like a Captain Obvious statement, but to me, it's fascinating. You have all these cells in your body, but all the cells in your liver are nothing but liver cells. And what's in your lungs is nothing but liver. It's lung tissue. It's phenomenal. Cells make up tissue. Tissues make up organs. Organs make up a series of systems. Do you ever notice that we don't do anything as a government, or excuse me, as a healthcare system, and it's pretty much anywhere in the world has been my experience? They will wait until your blood work comes back and says, yes, you have adrenal fatigue. Yes, you have Epstein-Barr. Well, you've waited until the system is diseased before we go, hey, maybe we should do something. This was the entire genesis behind our complete med solutions. If blood is the foundation of life, and we have our athletes try to get their blood done ideally once a quarter, at the very least twice a year. Because if the blood is in disarray, think about it. When you get your blood results back, and let's say that you're out of range in iron and zinc, there's only three reasons why you would be out of range. Either one, you're not eating enough food that has it. Number two, you're burning that nutrient at a higher rate than you can consume it, which is what we've talked about several times
Mhm.
today. And the third one would be maybe you're not absorbing it. So when you throw that word out there, bioavailability, I think people underestimate how powerful that is. You could eat a banana, and if it's not ripe, it's useless. You can eat something if it's not, and again, I would love to say that we eat nothing but organic, but I'd be lying to you, right? As I look at you here where we live, we can't get organic stuff reasonably priced, and it perishes within a day. That's just not logistic. It just logistically does not work for me. So we go to the store every 3 days. And yes, we shop the perimeter of the store. We have a couple small markets that we go to. We have a Spanish market that's right next to the gym. They have great stuff. But until you go to a place like Costa Rica, or you go to some of these other places where it's truly farm to table and you eat it and you experience and feel the difference, you'll never fully comprehend what we're talking about. And with that being said, the challenging part that we run into is, if you shop the perimeter of the store itself, you pretty much take care of 90% of exactly what we're talking about, if that's truly a challenge. Now you could argue, yes, over, like, you remember when you were here in Florida, Ian, we have Publixes. Yeah, you can find the fried chicken and you can find the chicken nuggets and all that, but work with me here. For the most part, 90% of the perimeter is going to be good to go.
Yeah, 100%. And, as you mentioned about, you'll never understand the difference until you've had the fruit. Like, for example, I love mangoes, like mangoes, papaya, all that stuff. When I get them in the States, the color, like instead of it being bright orange, like this majestic, like flower, bright, beautiful orange, it's like a pale yellow.
Yes.
And the taste is like not even there. So I kind of feel like we've been, our bodies know what's right for us, unless
Absolutely.
it's tricked, right? Unless we
Absolutely.
can trick it, or we can know what's right. So, like, the moment something goes in our mouth, like if you've ever gotten food poisoning, I know for me, I've swallowed a piece of fish and like, wait, I shouldn't have
Done.
swallowed.
Yep.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
oh no, this is happening.
Yeah.
So, but it really depends on how far you want to take it. Like, I guess
Mhm.
the analogy that was given to me, well, somebody had told me a story about how they had multiple horses and how one of them was actually like killing them because it was a thoroughbred, and they were spending, I think it was like $10,000 a month in the food and the care for this animal, right?
Mhm.
But it was a prize horse. It made them money back in aces in many ways, right? So,
Yeah.
but they weren't they weren't talking about how much it was to work it out. It was like the food, like, oh my gosh, the food, we have to give it the best possible food. And something went in my mind at a young age. I think it was like 8 years old, and I was like, why would I eat anything that, like, if I want to compete and be active, why would I eat anything that wasn't as good as a thoroughbred, right? Or
Exactly. Yep.
try to do that. If people put race gas in their bike, why do you put race gas in your bike? Like, you want the best possible throttle response. That little instant of throttle response gets you over the triple. Same thing with your reaction time.
Yep.
So,
And I get this quite often. People will say, "Well, I can't afford to eat healthy." So if you follow me on social media, I've done things where I'll put together a $1.75 snack. You know what I mean? It'll be some organic yogurt. It'll be some honey. It'll be some blackberries, blueberries. It'll have some wheat germ on it and a little bit of raw honey from a local farm. And you put it all together, and I think it was like $2.80 is what I came up with. And look at the nutrient value associated with that. And it took me literally less than 5 minutes to make it. And so
well,
that,
it's too expensive objection in reality is, I don't care enough.
Mhm.
I really don't care enough. I'm too lazy, or like I just don't want to change what I'm doing, because it's always BS. Like, that's the objection, that whether you're buying a expensive house, or
Yep.
you're paying for your ride pass, or you're buying food, not you, but maybe not anybody watching this, but
Yes.
that's the normal, like, that's the go-to, like, oh, that's too expensive. And it's like,
Mhm.
wait, is it really too expensive? And then that's not even considering the medical bills and the time lost from being ill.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
um,
and I don't mind sharing this with you and the people who are with us tonight. When I had my heart attack, my invoice came in after insurance. My bill is $151,000 for a heart attack. And I was in the hospital for 3 nights, 4 days, $151,000, and that's with insurance.
yeah,
So I don't mind spending $3 on some organic yogurt and all that. And so when you put all that into context, right, you bring that full circle. Why are you gaining weight eating fried food? It's because of the water retention associated with the fried food and the breading and all that goes with it. It's not because when you mentioned earlier that you could eat lean protein, you could eat an abundance of calories and actually lose weight,
yeah,
especially for, like, we have a vertical of business, which is nothing more than general fitness and weight loss. And you've got a group of people who are being told that you're orally fixated, you eat all the time, blah, blah, blah. When they come to us, I'm like, you don't eat enough of the right things. So now,
yeah.
instead of them, counting 11 almonds and going to bed hungry and starving and having a headache and not sleeping good, right?
Wondering
And
why
then when
they're
they,
cranky and the world sucks.
yes, and they go to the gym, and the trainer's going to show you how bad they are. They're going to make you run on the treadmill when the best thing you could do is go walk in the water. and then come home and just eat constantly grazing. Now, again, we're not eating high glycemic items. You're eating a fruit, a vegetable, and a lean source of protein, just like two-stroke oil. When you mix it, you have a low glycemic response of insulin in the bloodstream. It's not rocket science. But boy, does the mainstream, especially with this doggone Google, right? Everybody's an expert. Everybody's got an opinion. This is the only way it's going to work. As I always say to you, Ian, I didn't create nutrition, but I'm certainly not going to argue with it either.
Yeah, and everybody has like something they're selling, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy talking to you, because you have this expertise, and there's like, I never feel like you're trying to sell me anything. You're just telling me what your expertise is, and if I want a program, like, then I'm going to reach out to you. The same thing you said in the beginning of the show. These individuals, Ryan Dungey reached out to you, right? It wasn't you chasing to try to get there, and it was from expertise in other areas that brought it in, and you taking the time to share this knowledge to get it into the minds of the Cycle Ranch community is just like, to me, it's just like the coolest thing ever, because we need it.
I appreciate
it. We all need it. And I need all the reminders, and I have lots of questions still, and I'm always going to. But we did have somebody comment earlier that I want to have you jump in. It's a little bit off topic.
Yeah.
We're almost at the top of the hour here. So
okay.
If anybody has some questions, drop them in right now. Please drop them in right now. I'm going to put this up here. I don't know if you can see that. Jordan McDonald.
Yep.
Asked,
thanks for the
tennis elbow.
Yep. First and foremost, Jordan, thanks for listening, and thanks for the question. If you think about tennis elbow, you have to think about the suffix itis. So when someone says you have patella tendonitis, it's the inflammation of the tendon associated with the patella. If you have pericarditis, that's going to be the inflammation around the heart. Anything that ends in itis is inflammation. When you look at the elbow joint, I want you to, and you can do this with your knee, you can do it with your ankle, you can do it with your shoulder. Always look at both muscles on either side of the joint. So like if you have tennis elbow, and there is a little bit of deductive reasoning that you need to do. If you reported yourself to one of our wellness clinics, what we would do is we would just start, it's called palpating. You just take your thumb and you start running it down the tissue very, very, very gently. And what you're trying to do is differentiate. Now I'm going to go down a bunny trail here, so stick with me, Jordan. You have to differentiate between the site of the pain and the source of the pain. So most people will say it hurts here. What we want to do now is go the opposite direction. What would be causing it? Whenever we're dealing with an elbow issue, the very first thing that we look at is the tightness of the bicep on the front of the arm versus the tricep on the back of the arm. Now, if you go to a bodybuilding gym, you know how you see bodybuilders and their arms kind of look like, remember, Ian, when you and I grew up, you had all those monkeys in a barrel. You could hook them up with their little arms, right? Because their arms are all like this. Whenever the arm cannot straighten out, you got to remember that the bicep is so strong that it's causing the arm to not be able to straighten. I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence. The bicep brings the hand up. The tricep's only role is to bring the hand back to anatomical neutral. So when you have pain in the joint, the first thing we do is we look at the imbalance, the muscular imbalance on either side of the joint. There's a product, and I've tried buying this product, because what I like to do is I like to buy products and sell them at cost to save money. So I love to buy in bulk. This company would not allow me to do it because I'm not a brick and mortar, and that's perfectly fine. I respect their business decision, but I do want you to support the company, because write this down on a piece of paper. It's called Roll, R-O-L-L, the letter R, and then the number 8. Roll Recovery R8. If you put that into Google, you're going to see this device that has 4 skateboard wheels, and it's spring-loaded in the middle. And what you do is you can, and by the way, you can use this on any body part, because what happens is it expands and goes super wide. So you can use it on your quads and do your ITB band. You could strip your shins to get tibialis anterior. It does a great job on your calf muscles. The reason why I bring it up to Jordan's question is, if you slide your hand through that Roll Recovery R8, what you're able to do is you're able to start working these muscles on our forearm. I hope that catches a lot of people's attention, because this is one of our devices that we use for arm pump. Because when you go and you get a massage, we all go after big muscles like our back or our legs. We're not saying, hey, can you strip my forearms? Seems silly, right? But Jordan, what you've got to do is you've got to roll that recovery device over your forearms, and then get on either side of your bicep and tricep. And what you're going to do is, when a muscle becomes tight, it's called the myotactic stretch reflex. Each muscle has the desire to not tear. So if I can get you guys to look at your right here on your elbow where it creases, that's where your bicep originates, and it inserts up here in the acromion process. So if that muscle is tight, we got to get the tension out of the belly of the muscle. I use this illustration all the time, so if you've heard it before, I apologize. If me and Ian are holding onto a rope and we're across the room from each other and it's super, super taut rope, if one of you guys go up and you push the center of that rope, it's either going to burn my hand or it's going to burn Ian's hand because the rope is so incredibly tight. Until either Ian or I take a step forward, the tension in the belly of that rope is never going to subside. So what you're doing with the roll recovery is essentially direct pressure and massage is all it's doing for you. But it's kind of hard to kind of get into these areas, and it's kind of hard to strip the muscles in your forearm. You roll your arm in that roll recovery, move it up to your upper arm, and what you're going to do is essentially get a massage. What that massage does is there's things called trigger points in the belly of the muscle. So when you go to untie your shoes and it gets a little small knot on it, that's what a trigger point looks like inside the muscle. The reason why it's important to you, Jordan, is the trigger point in the belly of the muscle will become the weakest link in the muscle, and that's where a future muscle tear will happen. So getting the trigger points out of the belly of the muscle is important. And when you do, you get the tension out. Think about when you untangle that knot in your shoelace. You notice how the shoelace lengthens?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you get rid of those trigger points in the belly of the tissue, the muscle now elongates, and the pain and the tension in your tennis elbow is going to go away.
That's awesome. I'm going to get one of those things. I actually dropped the link in for everybody to get right off. They can get it off Amazon.
And please understand, we don't make money on them. I just want you guys to have the resources that you know works. But please do not take it to the track and let everybody see it, because that's your little ace in the hole. You go in there and you do your arms before the moto and you get the blood flow going, but keep it in your gear bag. Don't let people see it. It's your trick. It's your trick.
You know, I struggled with my elbows when I was out there last time. I finally got it back into riding. I could finally pull those 30-minute motos, and I was having lots of pain in my elbow. And what I actually found was that it wasn't in my bicep where I was experiencing the pain. I didn't get diagnosis on anything. And I was anti-inflammatories and all that stuff. But I actually found it was in my wrist. Mm-hmm. And it was because I had broken my wrist and I never really did the physical therapy that I needed to do.
Yep.
And I kind of chinched on it. It was fine for me until now I got older, and it was like, oh my gosh, like I had to do a lot of time getting my wrist to go 90 degrees, getting to go 45 and really be able to be comfortable with that. That was one thing. But then the other thing is now when riding, we have a tendency, we're holding the bike, right? So we're using our forearms in this holding motion. That's how we use our hands. When do we ever do that? Right? When do we ever have tension like that? Right? So if we don't even just practice it with our hands, and you can do this while you're driving, whatever, and you can just use like a calisthenics type of energy to press it out through, and just tensing that muscle will make it stronger on the opposite side. So that's what I had to do. And it's right in line with everything you said. It was just the opposite direction for me.
Yes.
Right.
And
just like when
remember
we
what
in our back, lower back, half the time it's our hip. So
well, and that's why I was saying when you put the roll recovery in, it's a win-win, because we all would love to have our arms slide and glide the way they're supposed to. Mm-hmm. So when you slide the roll recovery in to get to your bicep tricep, you're working a group that needs to be done. And to your point exactly, we always start distally and then we come up proximally towards the heart. So even if you don't have wrist issues, what the goal would be, and I didn't want to go down a bunny trail, but because you went there, Ian, I'll go there for just a brief moment. You should always work the furthest and come towards. If the problem is here, you always want to work away from it. And like, for example, if you have a problem in your foot, you don't want to massage towards the tips of your toes because you look like Fred Flintstone when you're done. You always want to come towards the heart. Like if you use a scraping tool, roll recovery, whatever it may be, always roll towards the heart. Always do the work towards the heart. You're facilitating what we call venous blood flow return. When the blood leaves the heart, it goes out through the aorta in the red blood cells, right? Or the red aorta. And we've talked about this before. If you roll your arm over and you look at the vein in your arm, you'll notice it's purple. That's unoxygenated blood. So if someone says, oh, that's a vein, that's where we get the word venous blood flow. Oxygenated blood leaves the heart through the aorta. Unoxygenated blood comes back through the veins. So you always want to go from the furthest and towards the heart because you're facilitating recovery. There's no sense pushing it away from the heart. You're just making more work for the heart.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I would imagine that roll recovery will help with any kind of tight fascia or even just doing this kind of, it helps if you're not pressing too hard, you're helping with lymph, right?
Yes. So for example, when we travel, I always have mine hanging on my backpack because when we're 30,000 feet in the air, like we went to Australia, I have my timer set, and at the top of every hour, I would just go from my ankles up to try to reduce the amount of inflammation and swelling. Because at 30,000 feet, gravitational pull will pull the lymph fluid down into the lower lumbar. That's why you end up with little Vienna sausages when you get off the plane, or you got cankles because of all the lymph that's been pulled down for 8, 9, 12 hours in the air. But it's a great device because it goes really wide. Like I said, you can do the muscle from your inside of your knee to your pubic bone. That's the adductor muscle or adductor muscle. And on the outside of the leg is your ITB, which gets really sticky. So you just open that bad boy up, put it on either side of your legs, and you don't have to go super crazy hard on it, just a little bit. So when we're flying, I'll start with my ankles. I'll come up my lower tib fib, come up into quads, and then I'll usually go up and down my arms as well. And then I always fly with compression socks as well, because they do work. Even though you feel like a grandpa when you wear them, they do work.
Cool. We got another question here too. This is from Mike. Mike raced this last weekend.
Okay.
So Mike raced. He crashed on the finish line jump. Mike, so sorry to hear you broke 12 ribs.
Ouch.
Collapsed lung. I have been waiting to get the injury reports back. I think I'm going to have them all tomorrow. So I'll probably be giving you a call, or somebody from the team will. So glad you're in recovery and your mind is set on the fastest way to heal. So what and breaking ribs, collapsed lung, not fun for at least 6 weeks in my experience.
No, especially with ribs, because it's frustrating. You break a tib fib or you break a femur, even though it hurts like crazy. You get that in a cast and it'll heal up quickly. Broken ribs, there's nothing you can do except just wait. It's not like they're going to cast your midsection of your chest. The best way is, and I don't want this to sound rhetorical based on what we've said here tonight, but food and sleep are absolutely the fastest way, because you got to remember, you've only got one tank of energy. And the more you split that tank of energy up, the slower it's going to be to recover. Now, again, I don't know, Mike, it may be difficult. You might have a family, you might own your own business, work for, a successful company. What all of those little pie slices is going to take away, and based on that kind of injury, you're probably not at work yet unless you're working from home. And again, we're not coddling you. Do the level best that you can to keep your overall stress level as low as possible. Now, when we're using the Garmin dashboard, and I'm always trepidatious to bring it up because I don't want anybody to be injured. But Mike, thank you for throwing the question out there. So let's talk about it. To me, this is where the Garmin is absolutely invaluable. If you're somebody who in your average stress score is a 37 and you break your ribs like Mike has done, you've got a collapsed lung, and all of a sudden his stress score goes up to 72 or 73, which is a natural reaction to that kind of trauma. The big question that I always get is, hey, Rob, when can I resume training? When you get back down to 25 or 30 where your stress used to be. But see, if you don't have that baseline, we have a high level of pain tolerance. Female racers are the absolute worst because they have such an incredible pain tolerance. They have menstrual cycles, they have pregnancy, they have all, and I say that respectfully, not even an ounce of being sarcastic. Their pain tolerance is abnormally high. Racers are the same way. So you may not even be remotely close to recovering. You're like, yeah, I'm good. I feel good. What's the stress level going on inside? What's your HRV? What's your resting heart rate? How's your appetite? Is it coming back? How's your sex drive? Are you sleeping good? Are you craving a lot of simple sugars? Or are you back craving good food? Because those are the types of subjective questions that this watch is not going to tell you, nor anybody else will. But if you're in tune with what you know is norm, and you said it and you articulated it earlier beautifully, you know what your body likes and doesn't like. You know what it needs and doesn't need. When you start seeing that normal range come back, you're golden. You've got exactly what you want. And then you just slowly work your way back into walk around the block. Don't worry about, you're like, oh, that's my exercise. Yeah, it's all your body's going to tolerate right now. Go for it. And, but think about it. If you keep dividing up all of, you've only got one tank of energy. if you can devote the lion's share of that to recovery. Now, I do want to make sure that Mike's comfortable with this. Please don't try to be Mr. Manly and avoid pain medicines. Now, I'm not into the narcotic type of the side of things because those are a little bit different. Don't be afraid of the ibuprofen, because if I can get you to mask the, now I'm gonna sound like a hypocrite. During the day, try to your best let pain be your dictator, because that'll keep you from coming back too soon. When you go to bed, mask the pain, baby. Because if I can get you to get a good 8-9 hours of sleep, that's going to speed up recovery. Don't be worried about, oh, I'm a wuss, I got to take ibuprofen. Screw that. Take the ibuprofen so it improves your sleep, which speeds up the recovery. Now, I want you guys to look at my hands. Imagine that this is nutrients from food and this is your blood. When you're eating high quality foods, all that nutrient rich food is pressing into the bloodstream. That's why I want you to graze constantly. Low glycemic food, so you're not getting the insulin spike, but I want you to graze constantly so we get this pressure of high quality nutrients pressing into the blood flow. Guess what? Now you're rested, you reduce the stress, nutrients are plowing in there, you're going to recover way, way quicker, and you'll do it in the right way. And to like what Ian said earlier about his wrist, if the doctors want you to do any physical therapy, go do it. Those people have so much experience of, they get their fingers in there, they'll find stuff that the normal doctor won't. Not that the doctor's not smart, they're busy. Physical therapists, they're going in there looking at joints, surrounding tissue. Man, you jack those ribs up, look at this SI joint. This SI joint is completely jacked. Wow, check your pelvis. Your pelvis is anteriorly rotated. Well, because your pain structure is more around your ribs right now, once the ribs don't bother you, all of a sudden you're like, why does my right hip kill me?
And the compensation, right?
That's exactly right.
Right. So I wholeheartedly agree with everything you say. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I have a friend right now that has broken ribs. And he has been doing the pain pill thing. Yeah. And he's running around, and every time I see him, he's like, oh man, I shouldn't be doing this, but I was climbing up on the ladder and changing a light bulb and I almost fell off. And then somebody came in and the kids came, and he's like really trying to be a good father and a good husband. And he's motivated to do all this stuff and doing the tough it out thing. But his recovery is now going to be 8-9 weeks long instead of 6 weeks before he's comfortable moving around. So your question is based around the fastest way to heal. And, definitely that obviously nutritionally rich foods, and getting as much rest as possible. And I know it's hard for, especially men who like race dirt bikes. We definitely have some element of alpha. I haven't met any beta motocross racers. Right. So I know it's probably not at all what you want to hear or do, but actually the more you do nothing but rest, especially in this beginning time, because unlike most things, laughter is not the best medicine for broken ribs. No. Stillness, calmness, just, breathe, there's probably some breathing exercises they gave you to do as well. Yeah. I know I punctured my lung. It didn't collapse, but I did have a puncture, and they gave me a tool, almost like a straw to breathe through, and there's a ball to be. Yep. And I actually ended up using it as a way to improve my lung capacity, because you need to be at 1,500 or something like that. And it went to 3,000, and you do it for 30 seconds. And I had that thing around for the next 2 years, and I would practice it not every single day, but I'd see it. And I'm like, let me see what I could do. Yeah. To the point where it became a game, right? Yes. That people came over and used later. And that kind of speaks to, if you do nothing right now and you do your rest, right? And you maybe focus on the diet, like Rob said. You also give you an opportunity, if you can use this, even if you use it as an excuse to not do some of the responsibilities you have to do, and you have to trick yourself to do that, you can use this as a time for like personal development, right? So if you are a business owner, this might be the time to write the business plan or the proposal that you never got the time to do, or work on the web, something. If you're not a business owner and you want to be, then it might be time to start your side hustle. That's right. That's what I was going to say. And this thing that is catastrophic becomes your springboard to something new. So that will keep you mentally sharp, right? And that, I believe personally, just from experience and things that I've read. So again, I'm not a doctor, but if you keep the mind focused on that, what life's going to be like as you come to the culmination of healing, I think that will definitely be a great thing that sends messages to your body, right? Like there's a lot of documentation on meditation and all of these visualization around the healing of the bones. And you might even want to explore that spiritual side of it. If you have the time to do it, you might find out something about your relationship with your physical body, because you're not your body.
Yep.
Right. And you probably felt that when you got hurt like this, like you're out of your body, like, because it hurts so much. Right. So you end up having that kind of out of body experience and realize I'm not this thing that I'm driving.
Yeah.
It's like another motorcycle. So you utilize that. Maybe that vibes with you a little bit. I know that it helped me in connecting with God.
Yeah. Well, we always say if you don't heal completely from the first accident, the second one's usually much worse if you try to come back too soon. So, and I also want you to realize I own a supplement company, and we have what's called nutritional bundles, and we have some for broken bones. And you notice that I don't always advocate that, because I would rather you do it with your real diet, with your real food, and focus on sleep. And if you get to a point where you say, hey, you know what, I just can't eat enough of this food, then yes, look at supplementation. And if you've heard me on other podcasts, I say it all the time. I own a supplement company, and I don't want people taking supplements until they're deemed necessary, especially when you're dealing with young kids, because like when you get into things like whey protein, they automatically think, oh, I'll just drink a protein shake instead of eating real food. Please don't do that. Supplementation is just that. If you find that you can't get enough calories, you can't get enough amino acids, you can't get enough of calcium, whatever's in the supplements, yeah. And then this is the other thing. My supplements are the most expensive on the market because they're 100% pure. And I'm not going to shy away from that. I'm not interested in making more money selling cheap garbage that essentially is going to go through your waste or your feces. You mentioned the word earlier, Ian, bioavailability. We have no garbage in ours. Ours is actually pharmaceutical grade, and you have to have a doctor's license to be able to sell it. My point being is, let pain be your dictator, mask the pain when you go to bed, eat as much good food as you can. And if you find that you're not healing correctly, you go to and you get a checkup and it's just not healing, then look to supplementation and check our products out, because they're in a bundle. So you don't take something that's not going to help. That's why we have one for concussion, and we have one for broken bones. We have one for surgery. We have them in a bundle because I don't want you buying item number 11 when you didn't need it. That's supplement companies piss me off like no others, because it's a game of, hey, let's bait and switch. Can't live without it. Can't live without it. Until you deem it,
far and few
don't buy
between
it.
that are in that space. Like, I just want to have a quality product, right? And
Yes.
there's a lot of buyers are like, that's just too expensive, right? So that's why they create those companies, right? But you're getting what you pay for. So one of the things, I know I have broken bones, and I was told to take calcium pills, but I actually regretfully did it because it actually caused issues for me later, because the calcium pills I was taking weren't actually bioavailable.
Yep.
Right. And so that's one thing we talked about earlier, right? So whatever you do, just check, thoroughly. And I'm sure if he has questions about it, he can probably DM you.
Please
right?
do. Yeah, please do. Absolutely. And that's open to everybody that's in here. And do me a favor, if you do DM me, let me know that you heard about it through here, because it helps me get a little bit more oriented towards, who is it that we're speaking with?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that's kind of wraps up our show. I don't think we really figured it all out. Because there's a lot of things that might be a 4-week thing in itself, but
Yes.
Number one is like nutrition. Get your nutrition.
Play the long game. Everything you're about to say is just all under the umbrella of play the long game, please.
Yeah.
Play the long game.
And I would venture to guess that, being mentally there, right, might even be above the nutrition. And we might be making the assumption that people are mentally there because they're watching this. But like, if every time you get on the bike, all you're worried about is crashing, the nutrition's not going to help you either. Right.
No.
Then you got some mental things to look at. Right. So, there's a lot of programs for that. So if you guys want any info on that, feel free to send me a message, because that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about. And also Robb has the degree in it. So definitely reach out to him. So maybe mentally, then our nutritional intake, making sure our health is there, And then we can start looking at performance as we optimize, because if you're not there with your health or your mind, it's going to be too long of a stretch to get to the performance aspect, and it won't be sustainable, right? And obviously having that foundation around you, ideally the family unit, having that strong family unit is one of the things that takes people from the amateur area to the pro ranks. So if you are a parent watching this, or parents, like, consider it, and be able to find a way to work with a trainer, if you're working with your local trainer or you're working with Rob, where your energy for your child's performance is actually on them and not your child, so that you can actually foster the relationship with them, because that's what you really want to do, right?
Exactly.
Be focused on making sure they have everything they need, right? So if they have everything they need to be successful, and you don't have to put pressure on them, you can keep it fun for them and let them, follow Rob's guide. They could be mad at Rob, right? That might be, they might hate Rob. And that might be the best conversation you have on your way home, is all the things Rob said and did that they didn't like. And you might agree with them, or you might be an opportunity to show them another perspective. So the next time somebody's trying to get them to rise up, they can see that, and you're the person that shows them, right? And that builds the relationship. And then when you go to, give your 2 cents, they're respecting it that much more. So
exactly. That's good stuff.
Yeah. So everybody, thank you for joining today.
Thank you very much.
Really, really appreciate everybody being on. We'll do more of we got 2 more of these on the schedule. So not next Thursday, the Thursday after. If you have questions in the interim, message us. We're here to help. And thank you so much, Rob, for your time on any of this.
My pleasure.
Do you want to say anything before we end the stream?
No, the only thing I'd like to say is, please keep in mind that this is a product and a service that's coming out of an incredible passion project of Ian. I know he's going to be mad at me for saying this. This is completely his brainchild. And anything that we can add with you guys being a member of the facility is really what this is all about. We want you guys to enjoy, ride safer, ride faster. Everybody wants to be faster, and really come up with a program that's sustainable. So thank you for giving us time. If this is your second, thank you for coming back. If it's your first, welcome. And we just look forward to seeing everybody in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much, Ian.
And Rob, thank you for saying that. Actually, I'm not mad at you. One of my things where I'm always blind is like sharing the premise. And I actually even thought this right before we started. And then we had not sure if Instagram was going to work, was setting an intention at the beginning. Right. And that's something that I don't necessarily inform people why I'm doing this, right? And like, why is this good? I've just seen so many people have unnecessary injuries, get burnt out, not make it to their top. And I really want Cycle Ranch to be a place, and it already is for many people, but I want it to have a consistent formula. If you come to Cycle Ranch on the weekends, you know that you're going to have success in other areas of your life. And I think that motocross gave me a lot of direction and discipline and energy and focus, like all kinds of things we need to be awesome. And I missed a lot of things too. I missed so many things, but now as I'm older, I start to see where I missed, right? So I'm like, I want to make sure Cycle Ranch encompasses all of that. So the whole thing about Cycle Ranch is the culture, right? That family-based, God, like that connection culture. And then we come and we moto together, we ride together, and we're consistently trying to improve and enjoy ourselves and recreate and forget about the BS, right? Yes. And when we forget about the BS, we can now insert some positive things that are going to help us when we get to the BS during the week and we have to trudge through life, right? Yep. So I want Cycle Ranch to be that holistic place for as many people as possible, and be able to do this online and be able to use the power of social media to be able to reach more people and get knowledge that I'm so privileged to get when I talk to Rob. And I always walk away, man, I'm so much smarter after talking to him. How am I going to tell everybody about this? And like, then I look like I'm trying to be the expert or whatever. Like, and people, what does he know about this? Right. Like, so if I can just bring them the source and say, hey, here's one of the most intelligent guys in the moto business, especially in this area. Like, let's get him on the show. So thank you so much, Rob. And thanks for pointing that out. Mr. Dirt Bike Stuff just commented, when's the next Cycle Ranch race? March 16th, we have Saturday night race ready. Actually, we're going to now do a Creekside race after. It was supposed to be the end of the series, but it's going to be a big event. for the Race Ready series. And we also have Yamaha demo days Saturday and Sunday. So you could demo Yamahas and then go race and hang out with us all weekend. We always try to do something a little bit more. And the next big like event that we're really working hard on, and it's really coming together well, is the Tex-Mex. It's our second annual Tex-Mex at the end of April. It's the 26th to the 28th. Will be that race after that, and that's going to be on the national track. So we already got $5,000 pro purse for that. I think $20,000 worth of contingency. We got all kinds of stuff that we're giving out. Maybe I can get Rob to come out and
That'd be awesome.
Set you guys up under a tent and share some stuff with you. So
that'd be fun.
Yeah. So we got some good stuff in the programming. Thanks again, Rob. I don't want to take you too long. I think we had an hour for this, so thank you for the extra time.
Absolutely.
Share this with anybody you know that could benefit from it, and we'll be back in 2 Thursdays together.
We'll see you then. Peace.